Just turn the clock. Turn the clock back. Oh, they put a new clock up there.
Oh,
They
yeah.
sure did.
That one was up there was always wrong.
Welcome to the regular Historic Preservation Committee meeting of Boulder City, Wednesday, February 26, 2020. Items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. Two or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item on the agenda may be removed or related discussion may be delayed at any time. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. And the first is public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda and on the agenda for action. Each person is up to 5 minutes to speak on any specific agenda item. And we will, during the agenda items, I'll have an opportunity for public speaking to, especially if you're here to present something to the committee. But is there anybody that wants to speak at public comment at this time? Okay. More than that, let's go to the agenda for possible action. Approval of the minutes of the January 22nd, 2020 regular meeting.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Do I have a second? All approved?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. For possible action, courtesy review of proposed changes to 554 Nevada Way. And I believe we have the owner here.
Yep, our owner, Dan Fox, is present, and he, I'm sure, loved to tell you about his plans for the Browder building.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan.
Well, the first thing I've done, I'm not quite sure how much you guys know what we're doing over there, is it used to be one piece of property, one parcel, from the end of Tony's all the way to the end of the Coffee Cup. I've divided it into two properties now, two separate parcels. This is something that I wanted to do so I could have two different little entities there. I think it'd be more valuable down the road to Boulder City and to the occupants who either buy it or lease or whatever we plan on doing in the future. But right now, we're doing a firewall. Is that where, Susan, is that what we're kind of talking about too, the firewall?
Yes, about the firewall and then whatever else you care to share at this time.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys know what's going in there yet. I do have both places leased. The Browder building. First, let me go back and kind of break it down for you. You have the Browder building, then which was, I do believe, the dollhouse. If we all know that, there's a dollhouse, the souvenir shop, and then say the Coffee Cup Mel's Diner. The dollhouse is staying as one big building, the souvenir shop, and then Mel's Diner is as one. That's where it's got a natural block building right in the middle, a block wall right in the middle. So that's where we separated it at for two different parcels. To complete this, talking to the city, I need to put a continuous firewall through the buildings there. And there are some openings inside the building, doorways, windows, so we're gonna block those up. And using stone and block, we need I think it's a 4-hour burn, and that will suffice that. Other than that, I don't want to get into what the tenants are doing. I don't know if it's even known yet, if they've told people what they're doing yet. I think that's probably for them to tell you guys or tell whoever. But that's what we're doing with it. It is all leased out, and they've got permits already. We got permits for the firewall. So it's going to be probably within 8 months, I would think, we'll be back. That corner will look vibrant again.
Wonderful.
Any questions?
Well, first of all, I'd like to, thank you very much, Dan, for coming before the committee. And, this is one of the jewels of the city, and we appreciate, it's great news when you bought the property, and we really appreciate the fact that you are bringing this to the committee, keeping us aware and abreast of what you're doing there, because it's such an important building to the whole city. And I trust what you're looking at, and the tenants are aware of the historical significance of the building. As a matter of fact, some of them has reached out to me and asked me about some of the history of that building and things like that, and maybe participating in Historic Preservation Day. So that's kind of great, and we appreciate that.
You're very welcome. I have told both tenants that, yes, they can't be just doing whatever they want. They've got to comply to, the Boulder City historic preparation of it. So, I mean, they're well aware of it.
Right. And actually, you're kind of restoring it back to, it was actually originally 3 parcels, I believe, right?
I don't know if it's 3, but
I think originally it was 3, and that souvenir shop in the middle is actually an add-on between an alley.
that was correct. That was actually like a covered seating for the Browder building
Right.
before the Mel's Diner.
Right.
It was really just like a pass-through,
Right.
and then they filled it in and made it more of a permanent structure.
Right. And we appreciate you putting up all the information from the Daughters of the American Revolution and the other place from the museum. I mean, it's just great. It just added to the history of the building and made I see people reading those signs all the time, especially the menu prices. They're kind of like, wow, yeah.
I like that one myself.
You like that one yourself? Is that what you told them? The prices have to be the same?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dan.
I know better than that one, so.
All right.
All right, anything else?
Anything from the committee? No, I don't. Okay. Well, thank you.
Oh, just thank you very, very much, Dan.
All right, you're very
Wait,
welcome.
I have a
Great
question.
work.
Sorry.
Blair's here. Yep.
Hi, everybody. I had 2 questions. One is, what is the code for the firewall exactly? Where are you finding that?
I can just tell you, call Mark Palm. I don't know the code. That's for it.
Mr. Chair, that is part of the fire code. So the International Code Council regulates building and fire code regulations, and so that's where that is addressed.
Okay, and thanks. And then how will this affect the front facade of the building, if at all?
Well, that is something that they are still discussing with staff. Potentially with the firewall, it may require bumping out 4 inches to effectuate the firewall so that you don't have, I thought it was 4 inches beyond the existing landing.
Beyond the planter box, but 18 inches beyond the wall.
So there is a planter box existing there. This wall would come out onto the planter box an additional 4 inches. And part of the fire code requirements is to prevent a fire in one unit coming over and starting a fire in the other unit. So that would be a potential impact.
So it extends about 4 inches on the front facade. How about height-wise? Does it have to go beyond the roof line?
No.
Okay. Okay, will we see pictures or drawings of what the firewall will look like?
We can certainly provide that with subsequent updates once that's designed and submitted to the city. Right now,
Okay,
it's just conceptual, and there's been conversations, and so we wanted Mr. Fox to come and provide an update to the committee on where he is at, and we will continue to provide updates to the committee as information submitted to the city.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3. For possible action, review and recommendations to propose addition of 312 Nevada Way relative to the adopted exterior design guidelines for that area. I believe we have the architect here.
Yes, we've got Alan Stromberg, the architect here, and as the staff report summarizes, there's just a couple of elements that don't conform to the adopted guidelines for an addition, the key one being just the wall material. They state will have to be stucco because there's no way to match that unique brick that's on the house.
Alan, do you want to say anything?
Just want to let you know, the owner of the property, Jay Mead, currently has also the house across the alley, and he bought that one years ago and replaced the windows with matching windows, but they're thermal windows, but they matched the same style because he wanted to make sure that his remodel was very authentic. So when he approached me to do this accessory building in the back, the studio and the double garage. The garage, the house, the 312, was previously Bob Kolar's house. But it only has a single car garage underneath the house. And so it's really kind of, it doesn't work for most people today. So we did this new addition, but the brick is just something I've had to deal with before. And there's nobody that makes that brick. I talked to Belden Brick Company in New York. They're one of the biggest in the country. I sent him pictures, and he said they could do it, but it'd be so prohibitive. You'd have to be a very large job and still be cost prohibitive. So we're kind of stuck to just go with a smooth stucco that will match other stucco places in the neighborhood, and we'll do it in a tan that we'll find a tan that harmonizes well with the brick. And I don't think it'll be very noticeable. If you look straight onto the house, I think it's about 5 feet that it protrudes past the side of the existing house. You'll see it more as you come down the hill, but from straight on, there won't be much of it visible at all, especially as you look up the hill too at it. I can assure you he'll do everything he can to make sure that it's compatible to the neighborhood and a good addition.
Yeah, well, kind of across the street a ways, but yeah, I looked at the property. I don't have any problems with it, especially if there's other stucco buildings that are nearby it, and I think that they'll do a good job of trying to blend in the community, because it's one of the premier locations of the city.
Oh, absolutely. It's so visible from every direction. 4 houses there are really visible.
All right. Are there any other comments from the committee?
I got a question, but I gotta find it first.
Okay.
Hang on. Don't go anywhere.
Why not?
Alan, I have a question about, let's see, is this thing on? I have a question about the guidelines, because I'm confused. These buildings are new buildings. And as I understand the guidelines that were written, and I think maybe you had something to do with the guidelines, that's why I'm glad you're here and I can ask you. My understanding is the guidelines are for rehabilitation or reconstruction or something. It doesn't, the guidelines don't address new buildings, do they?
The guidelines that are printed there are the secretary's guidelines. On the last page, you mean?
No, the guidelines that are included.
You mean the
in
guideline, Boulder
historic
City guidelines?
preservation Guidelines, okay, for the.
For that area?
For that area, or
Yeah, I
for
think
any
so.
area, actually.
Yeah,
but
the
it-
guidelines, they do indicate for new construction also, or additions or remodels, anything as far as the roof slope and as far as the materials, and they're pretty. I think it's pretty clear. It was a committee effort. It wasn't just me.
So if you want to build a new house in the historic district, you have to build it to the guidelines that are applicable to that part of the district, is that correct?
Well,
Or no?
as far as I understand, until we pass the firm ordinance that they can be firm on how things have to be built, all we can do is offer a suggestion that they match the guidelines.
Well, and I understand that. I mean, we can't do anything. I
Right.
mean, you can build whatever you want.
Right, but I think the intent is to try and guide people to do it, in a compatible
No, I
fashion, so
understand,
that is to their benefit as it is the
And
neighborhood.
don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing,
Right.
because I'm sure you're going to do a beautiful job there. It's questions I've had about these guidelines that
Sure.
I don't quite understand, okay? I don't have any problem with what you're doing here. It's beautiful, and I'm sure it'll be good. But I'm still confused about some of these guidelines, and hopefully these are going to change in the not-too-distant future. But anyway, that answers my question.
Looks like you're headed on the right path.
So we'll hopefully be addressing that down the line, and probably be talking to you again, I hope. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. Any other questions? That's okay?
Blair, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, and my only comment is thank you, Alan, for the wonderful work you do as far as rehabs and new construction that fits beautifully within the historic district in Boulder City. Thank you again.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind. Thanks. Thank you all.
Thanks, Alan.
Well, actually, item number 4 kind of addresses that next question. For possible action, discussion on development of historic preservation plan for Boulder City with consultant Heidi Swank, Nevada Preservation Foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just provide a little brief context, and then I will turn it over to Heidi Swank to speak with the committee this evening. So one of the goals of the city's 2025 strategic plan, as well as a goal of the Historic Preservation Committee, is to develop a historic preservation plan for the community. Earlier this year, at the end of last year, the City Council approved a budget amendment to allow the city to move forward with hiring a consultant to help engage the community in development of this historic preservation plan. Similar to the strategic plan and similar to the economic development plan that had been previously adopted by the community, this plan, after community input, will have measurable, actionable goals to guide the community with respect to historic preservation efforts. The city has selected the Nevada Preservation Foundation to lead this effort. And in fact, we are going to have a kickoff meeting with the community, and we're inviting the community to come out on Thursday, March 5th, between 6 and 8 p.m. at the multi-use building on 6th Street to help provide initial input in the direction of this plan. Staff has put within your packet the Nevada Preservation Foundation scope, which lays out kind of the plan for the guidelines for the plan development. And Heidi Swank, the executive director for the Nevada Preservation Foundation, is here to answer your questions.
Would you like me to start, or do you want to start asking questions?
Go ahead and start.
Okay. So I'm Heidi Swank. I'm the executive director of the Nevada Preservation Foundation. Always a fabulous day when I get to come to Boulder City, especially after dark when I get to drive by all the lovely signs. It's a nice drive. So we have been hired to what we're calling is an update to your 1998 plan that you have, which has some good pieces to it that addressed really the the beginnings of Boulder City. And what we proposed is to take that plan and bring in what we're calling the next chapter of Boulder City. That plan laid out a lot of the information and ideas around the origination story of Boulder City, but we know that Boulder City now has gotten older and has more chapters beyond that origination story. And so we proposed to start looking at the mid-century through the 1970s, and we will even look as far as possibly as new as 1980. We think that too often in historic preservation, organizations stop at that hard 50-year mark, but if we can look a little bit beyond that into those 40 years, it gives any plan that we come up with more longevity. And that we always know that that 50-year mark is not a hard and fast rule, but it's more of a guideline. I always give the example of we know that on September 12th of 2001, the World Trade Center site was historic. We didn't need 50 years to look back to know that it was historic. And so sometimes we have sites that are important before they hit that 50-year mark. And so we'll be looking up through 1980. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the process and kind of who's going to be working on this. So I'm working on I and Mariana Ruiz, who is our architectural historian, we're going to do the bulk of the work on the plan, on developing the historic preservation plan and making the outline that will help you make the most of your newly awarded CLG status. Susie Van Ness is also part of our team. She heads up our heritage tourism branch, and she'll be doing your heritage tourism assessment later on in the process. We'll also bring in Rosie Ledard, but just for the March 5th meeting, because we'll need more people to manage that workshop that we're having next week. She heads up our historic district neighborhood campaigns, and so we'll be able to provide some insights on how, on grassroots approaches to naming historic districts. So we had our kickoff meeting with Mr. Mays we have all of our background information. We've all been studying up, making sure that we know all the resources that you have, and starting to develop a plan for moving forward. We're really right now at this point in that phase of collecting information from everyone, from the community, from the commission, from city council, because we need to learn what it is. This is your plan. And so we need to know what you need in that plan, what you would like to see, and we can help guide that, but in the end, it needs to be your plan. So next week, as Mr. Mays said, we are doing a workshop with the community, and basically this is going to be, it is a workshop for us because we need to find a way to get people to talk about historic preservation in Boulder City so we can learn what it is they want. So the plan is that we'll run this the evening that I'll do a bit of an overview of why we're here, who we are, and what the historic preservation plan is about. And then we're breaking out the community into 4 groups. We'll have 4 tables that our staff will all be at, and each table will have a different topic, and there'll be 15-minute time slots at each table, and then the members will move around. And so each person will get a chance to talk on these 4 topics. And our 4 topics for the tables are, the first is what is historic preservation, trying to get people to think about, I think there's often a perception that historic preservation is freezing things in time, and we're really trying to get people to see like really how, like the changes that have happened over the last several decades in that approach in historic preservation. So we're going to talk to people about what historic preservation is and kind of how that fits in Boulder City. We're also, the next table will talk about historic preservation commissions and ordinances, and we'll provide some frameworks for how historic preservation commissions are structured across the country, focusing a lot on Nevada, on what we have here in Nevada, but looking at other states also, as well as talking a bit about ordinances. The third table will be on the historic designation process. So how is it that neighborhoods get designated? How do individual structures, sites, or objects or buildings get designated? And also getting people to talk about possible incentives. What are some of the incentives that, I know everybody wants to say that'd be great to get a grant, but are there other ways that we can incentivize becoming part of a historic district? And then the fourth table will be on heritage tourism, offerings and possibilities. So getting people to talk about what are their favorite heritage tourism events that exist here in Boulder City, and where do they see the gaps so that we can help to identify what they would like. And I think here, like much of Southern Nevada, we're a big tourism economy. And, I live right off the Las Vegas Strip, so I feel it that sometimes I feel like stuff isn't for me. And so we want to hear like, what is it that folks want in Boulder City that's aimed at them as residents of Boulder City, as well as what would be aimed at tourists. So that's our plan for next Thursday. And then about a month after that, we're going to hold another community meeting to give people an update on where we are. I think it's really important in these processes that we engage with the public. These are their dollars at work, and we want to make sure that we're being very transparent. And then toward the end of the whole process, we'll hold a meeting to present the draft, and then we can get their comments back on that draft before we develop the final preservation plan. So we'll also meet with City Council and with you all in order to get input on what it is you would like to see in the historic preservation plan, as well as what City Council members would like to see. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of where we're at, but I'd really like to hear from you as far as anything that you would like to see, that you like about your historic preservation plan, that you would like changed, that you think would be a good addition. Any ideas, I'm happy to take them.
Anything from the committee?
Heidi, so the meeting is next week. So I'm a little bit concerned about how soon the meeting is coming up, and I'm concerned about the community getting a chance to hear about it properly. And I was wondering, I noticed when Henderson did their plan, they sent out postcards, they sent out direct mailers, 3,000 of them to the community, and a direct invite to their workshops. And so I'm wondering, what are we doing to get the community to our workshops?
So I have been working with our public information officer to get the word out through social media, as well as promotion at last night's council meeting and information out to the community, letting the press know about it so they can publicize it. We're trying to highlight this in different areas to let the public know about the meeting. One of the challenges is with this process, we are working to complete this before July. And so certainly while this will be the initial opportunity, as Ms. Swank mentioned, we're going to have a subsequent meeting for additional community input in another month, and we'll continue to promote that.
And is there going to be anything in the utility flyer or mailer? Is that too late for that, or?
Yeah, the challenge with the utility mailer is that has to be prepared 2 months in advance. And so that's the challenge with, once we entered into the contract with the Nevada Preservation Foundation and met and scheduled the meeting, there wasn't an opportunity to present it there. But we are getting the word out to the community in many different ways.
Is there an email list for people in the community that we can send out an invitation to via email also, rather than just counting on social media?
We don't have a list of emails of citizens, but anybody who has signed up for public notifications through Civic Plus, our website, receives a notification that way.
Is there a possibility that this might be recorded somehow?
I don't think the multi-use building has the, I think Heidi's in the, yeah. I don't think it has the ability for recording.
We will be keeping notes, and also because we will have 4 tables going on at the same time, I think it might be difficult to glean anything from those.
Right, you're kind of going through a process. You've done this before, and I'm assuming that it's a process and it's...
Yeah, and this is a great way, I think, that for us, I'm a big fan of small groups. I think when you have a large auditorium of people, there are a lot of folks who won't speak up, and they won't because they feel a little intimidated. So we always try to break people down into smaller groups, and that in that more kind of intimate setting, we find that people are more willing to kind of share their thoughts. And so the idea was to break it down into smaller groups.
Mm-hmm. Let's say on these public interactions, when we have these public, these different, how many public events do you foresee having?
We foresee having 3, maybe 4.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And there'll be some kind of summary made prior to every event or something like that, or will they?
Yeah, there'll be an update that I would envision being an update that I'd give kind of where we are in the process and. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Blair, and I had a question. Is there a possibility of using online surveys to solicit opinions? The other thing regarding surveys is the city did conduct a survey on quote unquote what is historic preservation, and I would just like to offer that as some information to pass along for this project.
We could certainly do an online survey. I would need to go out through, it would need to get emailed out.
I think what Blair is suggesting is that the city put out a survey that this committee put out, and I think she's requesting the results of the survey given to you. Is that what you're saying, Blair?
No, that's what I thought she said too. Is that right?
I was asking if an online survey would be available for the public to respond to with this process, and if not, I mean, no matter if there is or is not, there was a survey that was conducted of the public, and the results of that survey should be available to you for this project.
I agree. I mean, Michael, can somebody possibly can give that to Heidi?
We would love to see that, and
Yeah.
we can easily pull together an online survey as long as there's a way to send that out to folks. That's not a problem at all for us to put together.
Okay. And currently, I noticed in your in the notes here that you are currently working on something for Henderson as well.
As part of Home and History.
Home industry. You know, what I appreciate about what you've done is that, it's not you're dealing with, not us directly, but, you were, I don't know, for background, Heidi was a speaker at Historic Preservation Day, not last year, but 2 years ago.
Gosh, I think further ago than that, too.
I think it was just 2. Is it 2? Maybe it was 3. More than once. When you were, you were in the DWP building.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago. And I think that, your approach to it was accepted very well, the history, and I think it's an opportune time because you are familiar and you've successfully maneuvered, some of these things, ordinances and neighborhoods in Las Vegas and Henderson, and, it's, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Right. There's a lot of preservation plans that get done across the country, right? There's a lot of good practices out there.
Right.
And I and my staff attend a lot of the conferences to make sure that we keep up on best practices.
Right, and the fact that you're a Nevada company, I think, is very important too. And
we like to think so.
You're proud of that, keeping all the money here in Nevada. So we appreciate that too.
I have a couple of comments, Heidi. I first of all am happy to hear that you're using that 1998 plan as a starting point, because there's a lot of good items in there. And I'm sure you're aware of this, but I do want to make note that after that plan was completed in 2000, the city council hired a consultant, and you guys remember her name, I've forgotten it, and she wrote Chapter 1127, which was adopted by the city council in 2000. And it had many elements that I think are absolutely critical that they be reinstated. Unfortunately, I think in 2005, the city council at that time rescinded the 2000 Chapter 1127 and did away with, they essentially eviscerated any historic preservation teeth, to the point where right now about all we can do is plan for a Historic Preservation Day and see whether we ought to have donuts or cookies and that kind of stuff, because we have absolutely no power to do anything in terms of historic preservation in this city. As Alan said when he was up here, we can recommend, we can beg, we can cajole, but we can't do anything. If anybody wants to do anything to the houses in this, they can do it. I think, in fact, the way the guidelines are written for the avenue streets is abhorrent, because there's only 2 reasons they even have to, they can't do 2 stories, and there's one other thing. If they want to do anything else, they don't even have to tell anybody, according to the guidelines, okay? Now, of course, I'm not saying they can't do anything they want, because they're building codes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of historic preservation, there's absolutely nothing in our codes that prevent anybody from doing whatever they want with a house or a building or a business. And that's got to change if we're going to have an historic preservation committee, which, by the way, I'm happy to hear you say commission, because we aren't a commission. We're a committee. And one of the first things that needs to be done is to make this committee a commission. And I'm going to push to have the charter changed to include it as a commission, which I know is difficult and may never happen, but I think it needs to be done. Because we are a stepchild, basically, to the Planning Commission. We've got words in here that say we got to tell the planning commission. The planning commission, we can go to the planning commission and they'll go tell the city council what we told them. That kind of stuff is nonsense. It's got to change. And I think you can do it. I know you can. I hope you can. Whether or not we can get it done through the council and so on, but there are serious changes that need to be made to the ordinances in this town if they're going to have a preservation committee or commission or whatever. Because right now there isn't anything. So I'm happy to have you here and I'm anxious to get this process underway. So thank you very much.
And I agree entirely with everything that he just said. This is really direction I think that the committee has been focused on for a number of years now, doing something about the lack of protections and having a proper historic preservation code. So we're counting on you, Heidi.
Doing my best. And I think for us, like, we need to hear all of that. And then on next Thursday, it'll be helpful for us with what we hear from the community too. We have a table specifically to talk about different ways in which historic preservation commissions or committees are configured. And so that people can see a range of options and choose from those as to what they think will best suit their community. And then we can kind of pull that together throughout this whole process.
Right. I mean, I'm glad you're saying that because I think that's the big challenge in Boulder City. It's the 98 ordinance was, part of this is to make an ordinance effective. We're going to have to get public engagement, public buy-in, obviously, on this. And, one of the problems and the reasons that the ordinance repealed is you can make an ordinance, but then you have to enforce it and you have to have people buy in and it wasn't properly bought into the community at the time. And, that public engagement, as Ray pointed out, I mean, I think that's why we're emphasizing it. As the public, they're going to feel like they have a chance to participate, make a difference. That's going to be critical in this town, that people understand the process. And, we may not all agree on everything, but we have to come to some kind of something we can all agree upon and feel happy with and move forward so that, we have a preservation code that will help preserve the historic, resources of our town.
And if I might say, I think that a lot of times when ordinances get kind of watered down a bit, it's due to a lack of understanding of what historic preservation is. I think that the idea that scares people is that they would not be able to touch their house or make it comfortable for them. And I think that is where, in our work that we do all over Nevada, that's the conversation we have over and over and over again. Can I change my paint color? I need an ADA ramp to my front door, right? There are a lot of these misunderstandings about what historic preservation constitutes, and it's the perceived, I think, inflexibility of historic preservation that scares people away and gets people to think that they can't, that this is not something for them, it's not something they can support. But if we can talk to folks about how to make alterations to your home that are in keeping with historic preservation principles, and that if we can get people to understand that this is not something that it protects their home values. We know that houses that are well protected in well-protected historic districts, that their home values go up more at a faster rate, not a lot faster than those outside the historic district boundaries, but definitely faster. And during downturns, they don't plummet as much. So it acts as kind of a buoy to be in a historic district that has good protections. But that doesn't mean you can never make any changes to your house. And I think that's where people, I've had that conversation with, I don't even know how many times I've had that conversation over the last 7 years since I started Nevada Preservation, but I have it, I would say, 3 times a month, at least 3 times a month. I'm thinking about this month. I think definitely I've had that conversation 3 times. And so I think if we can get people, I actually brought a preservation brief that I can leave for you about, there's these great preservation briefs that the National Park Service puts out. And I think preservation brief number 14, it's all about additions to houses and how to do it well, is something that could bring a lot of a lot of comfort to a lot of people, that there are ways to alter your home that are in keeping with the Secretary of Interior standards. It might surprise people too as to what is actually okay within that umbrella of historic preservation. So I think finding that path to getting people to feel more comfortable, to realize the flexibility of historic preservation, I think that's how you start to win over not only your community members, but your planning commission and your city council.
Hi, Heidi. This is Blair. Yeah. Sorry, I'm this voice from out in the middle of nowhere. I really appreciate your that you've been selected to work on this plan, and I'm really looking forward to working with you and the rest of the staff on this. I did have a question regarding why heritage tourism was a specific focus, as opposed to, I guess, economic development as a whole, which would include heritage tourism. Because one of the things that I see in the town or the community is it's not just about people's homes and people worried about what they can paint their homes or what they can do to their roofs, but it's also what is the economic or the incentive, the financial incentive, not just for the homeowner, but for the businesses as well as the main street and the community as a whole. And then again, will there be an opportunity to talk about or include options for improving economic development that includes historic preservation, or working or options for working with the real estate businesses or the developers within the area to utilize historic preservation in our community? Thanks.
So we included heritage tourism because heritage tourism is a big sector of what we do as an organization. And we have an event every year called Home in History that brings about 700 people to Las Vegas Valley. We did a home tour here in Boulder City as part of Home in History last year. And this year we're doing a day-long bus tour called Water Over the Dam, all about the history of Boulder City. So that's for us is a big part of what we do as an organization. As far as incentives, I mean, we will be talking about tax credit options and ways in which there are ways to kind of key into economic development. I would say that we don't do economic development directly. There is a great program through the state of Nevada that already does that called the Main Street Program. It's through the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And it is a program that Boulder City should be a member of. And there's an application process for that, and we can definitely lay that out in the historic preservation plan that we do recommend that you become a member of the Main Street program. It provides a lot of training for folks on the ground in Boulder City to reduce vacancy rates, to find ways to diversify if you need to diversify your Main Street. It is a national program that is a branch of or came out of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So we are not economic development experts, but we do have a program here in the state that brings in those experts for us.
I'm glad to hear you mention the Main Street program. That's come up a couple years ago, and I'm glad that you're going to help implement that.
It just came through the state legislature in 2017, and it was my bill.
Thank you, Heidi.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Are we going to be able to get a copy of that guideline thing that you?
The preservation brief?
The preservation,
I'll leave it with Mr. Mays.
Okay, great.
Yep. And they're easily found online on the National Park Service website too. So you'll have to excuse the really grainy printer from our office that it's on. It's not super pretty.
It's historical though. It looks more historical. It's like our manuals.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else? Well, thank you very much, Heidi. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Heidi,
it. We look
very
forward
much.
to
Next
seeing
week.
more of you.
Yeah, no, we're really excited about this. This is going to be a great project. We, after Home in History last year, when we did the home tour, my entire staff just fell in love with with Boulder City, so it's always a great time when we get to come out.
Oh, good. Well, we'd love to have you out here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, for possible action, summary reports regarding activities for Historic Preservation Day 2020 and the Historic Preservation Award 2020.
Blair had provided an updated task list after the packet, so that was the one that was provided to you on your dais.
Just as a update, how many applications do we have, Susan?
The staff report mentioned 6 nominations for 5 properties. We've gotten a few extra since then.
Okay, so it's much better than the 3 we had last month then.
It's slowly increasing.
And then the deadline is March 16th,
Yes.
I believe, for applying for the Historic Preservation Award, which, you know, just for the audience, I mean, anyone could actually nominate any building in the historic district. So you don't have to be the owner or this, if you think that there's a building worth nominee for the Historic Preservation Award, you know, please look online and nominate it. It's an open.
Did you say the 16th, March 16th?
This month, or next month. It's still February, right? Okay, okay, yeah. So up to March 16th.
Did we get any more applications, Susan?
That's what she said.
I'm
just
sorry.
said- Yeah, we received a few more since
Okay,
what I wrote
I
in the staff
missed that.
report.
Thank you.
Well, anybody have an update? You want to go first?
No, wait a minute, I have a question. I do have a question, because, and Susan, this is a question for you, I guess, because I'm looking at the timeline for the Historic Preservation Award, and the March 16th is the nomination submittal deadline. And then on our meeting on March 25th, which is 9 days later, we have to choose the award. Do we get, I don't see anything in there where we get who these nominations are
Well,
before we have to make the decision
the
to.
25th is your regular meeting date, so in the packet for that meeting, just like all the other years, the packet will include every single nomination, so you'll see them all at once.
But we don't have, if we want to go look at the property, how are we going to do that?
The packet comes out the week before the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get so the packet will have okay, well, that was my
Right.
question, yeah. So the
And
packet
keep
will
in
have-
mind, this is the deadline the committee chose.
Yeah, right, yeah, well,
Yeah.
I know, I understand that, but I probably didn't know what was going on, so probably wouldn't happen there. But yeah, I forgot, so we do get the packet, and the packet will have, yeah, all right.
Well, I can give a brief summary here. Actually, unless you want to do it, Blair, for our meeting. And we met with the museum, Tiana and Roger, and everything's under control, right? And we have more participants. I mean, just an update. We have a sponsor for the reclamation of the kind of the ice cream social in the park. And we still need a sponsor organization, but we have a monetary sponsor for it. We also have more buildings that have been included, wishing to be included in our open house, which we can add to our map that the museum is putting together. And they also have Tiana's information. I'm not trying to overwhelm her. She only gave me 15 cards saying that so many we have, but there'll be some few. But now we have, I met with the Masonic Temple, and they're excited about their participation. And also Parks and Recreation will open up the gymnasium as part of the open house. And I've got a commitment from Chief Shea of the police department, and they're going to open up not the whole police department because of the security, but they're going to open up the old jails downstairs. So kind of an interesting moment. When in 1960 that was our jail. So we'll have a little block of things here. And I've also spoken to the Episcopal Church. So right in that area there, they have agreed to participate in the activities. So that plus the the Cup, Grace Community Church, the company store. We're opening up the water treatment plant. And have I missed anybody else?
It says here the Browder Building.
Oh, the Browder Building, yes. Actually, one of your tenants called me and said they may just want to push out, and we can talk a little bit about that, but they have talked about maybe, putting up talking about the history and talking about what's going to come up in there. So there's another opportunity to, it'll be in May 9th. Sure. And I think that's it for now. But, as far as that, the other question I had basically as far as update is our budget. Do we have a budget item as far as we're talking about 1 or 2 awards? Oh, I did get an additional pricing. One of my assignments was everyone seemed to like the balloon idea of putting balloons at every venue so it'd be recognizable. And we can budget balloons and helium for about $200. It should cover all the balloons and heliums we need.
So, Mr. Chairman, to respond to your question regarding the budget, I will be presenting to the City Council at the next budget workshop on Tuesday a request for the additional funds to add to the Historic Preservation Day and getting their feedback at that time.
Right. As far as the funds that are available, those are the things that I mentioned, and we do have a sponsor, Desert Sun Realty. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. And the Kaufman Building, Desert Sun Realty will be part of that event, and they will also willing to sponsor the ice cream social event and on the lawn, the speaking event up on the lawn of Reclamation.
On the ice cream social event, so we talked about having the historic coloring book for children.
Yeah.
So I priced those out there $3 each. Do you think that's something that could be covered under the ice cream social, the sponsor for that? I think we talked about 40 coloring books, which would be $120, and then some crayons, so maybe about $160.
I think we can probably run it. It's like, that'll probably cover the event. It was kind of a rough.
Can you ask them if, and if not, we can try and find someone else. But
I think Brett would be willing to do something like that.
Cool.
Just make it his event, or sponsored that event.
It'd be fun for the kids. Nice to give out a little something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right. And so have we talked to the artists?
Yeah.
Committed? Okay.
Rudy Kraft.
He was on our committee for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Alan, just to be clear, the big thing that's looming as far as what I need to take care of is the one-page, two-sided event schedule and map.
Right.
And I need your final list of who's going to be participating. I'm thinking by next week, so that I can then get together with Lisa LaPlante and talk about what that flyer will look like as far as the day's event, as far as the schedule, but then the map, the city will be working on that, not the museum.
Right. Oh, really? Okay. That's fine. What I've, basically, there's one more, Bella Mia the Antiques, next to the Grace Christian, which has been the Elks, which has been Central Market, which has been a hot healthcare center, which has just been about everything you name in the city. That building has been. So that's kind of just another historical. But I can get you a list of everybody this week. And
that'd be great. Thank you.
What we may be, what I'm saying to people, because I've put it out to the Chamber of Commerce, is that in order to be on the make deadline, is that I needed commitments by the end of this month or the first part of, by next week, in order to be in the map. So that follows our deadline. Okay.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
I have a question for Michael. So for the water filtration plant tour, Michael, usually the city goes in beforehand and sweeps it out, cleans it up a bit. And I was wondering if this year we could make sure to maybe have that done about a week before, so that we can then access the building maybe the day before or a couple of days before to set things up and put up the historic photographs that we plan to display and stuff like that, rather than on the morning of the event.
Yeah, I can ask Public Works if they can schedule that for a week ahead.
Charlie?
Well, I can give you a brief
Yes.
update on what we've done. And basically, actually, Blair and I met with Roger and Tiani last week, and we're in pretty good shape for everything. The tour times are, as we discussed in the past, 10 o'clock, 11:30, and 1. They'll be basically 1.5 hours each. There are going to be 7. The tour is down Avenue B, across New Mexico, and then back up Avenue C. And we're going to have staged events, or I still haven't come up with a good word for it, but a skit or an information talk at 7 different addresses on those 2 streets. And those will be detailed in a summary of each of those houses. And the people that lived in the houses, isn't so much the house itself, it's to talk about the people that lived in the houses, will be outlined in a booklet. The booklet is in a draft copy right now. We should get it back, hopefully in the next week or 2, and continue on with it'll be a nice little brochure. It'll have a write-up on one page and pictures on another page. It'll have some information about the district in general, that specific part of the district. It'll have some information about the guidelines for the historic houses on those streets. So I think it'll be and it'll have a map showing which of the 7 houses will be highlighted, or the people in each of the 7 houses that will be highlighted. So that seems to be coming along nicely. Tiani has been a great help, and as has Roger. So I think we're on schedule in terms of producing those items. And the one thing that sitting next to me is the guy that's going to put together some of the skits. So I have to keep bugging him. But I think we're in good shape. Yeah, I think we're in good shape time-wise. So.
I had one minor concern. I see that the tours are scheduled for an hour and a half apiece, starting at 10 o'clock. Now, 10 o'clock at the company store, the idea was to kind of have a kickoff.
That changed, Alan. That's a minor detail. It changed because...
Isn't it starting at the same time?
No, because we can't start them at the same time. And the introductory...
I missed that.
It's on the yellow one. The one that's got yellow on it. Tara expressed, Bertrelli, the owner of the company store, that it was too much for her to have the introductory information station for the entire events for the day. It was too much for her to have there. So she has pretty much expressed the desire that she will take care of, what we originally discussed. She will take care of a place to start the tours on the avenues. Roger and Tiani, the museum has offered to use the museum or the hotel as a place for initial information where people can come and get the maps, the events of the day, an orientation in terms of what time things are going to happen and where they're going to be. So that will happen at the
Hotel.
at the hotel, and not at the company store. So the company store will be available for the tours, but not for the, well, the company store is going to be a venue. I mean, people can drop in, obviously, at the company store anytime they want. And I'm sure Tara will have some kind of displays and whatnot, I think, won't she? I'm sure she will, so.
Okay, so that's the event venue, so Boulder Dam Hotel and Museum event information,
Right.
9 a.m. to 2:30?
Right,
Okay.
and that'll be at 9 o'clock, or 9:30, what did we?
Well, I'm glad I
what
asked
did
you
we
the
put?
question.
Yeah, see, well, that was a simple question you
Starts at
asked.
9.
You said,
Yeah.
yeah, at 9 o'clock.
That was a change,
And,
yeah.
and then we'll start the tours at 10 o'clock. So people, because people don't have to go to, they can go to any one of the venues they want to. I mean, if they're at the hotel, the Masonic Temple's right down the street, the Grace Community Church, the Episcopal
Yeah,
Church.
that's all within.
That's all within 5 minutes, you know. So
Right.
they can go from there and then hopefully filter back to the tour at 3 different times. So, because one of the big unknowns that we have in terms of during that tour is there's no way of knowing how many people are going to
Yeah.
show up. So you don't know whether you're going to have 3 or 15 or 40 or whatever. So hopefully by having 3 different times, it'll spread out a little bit. You know. So anyway, that's some of these yellow things in here are. I don't think there's any real major changes. It's just that one.
Well, where we're going to meet is kind of major.
Well, right, that's a major change, yes, but that's really the only one I think that's a significant change. I think some of these other things are just who's doing what and so on. So so.
Well, I have no problem with it. That's, that was my concern. It's like, I don't know how we could start it at the same time.
Well, right,
And how
and that was-
tight you guys were.
Some of us have to be at the other
Right,
house.
it wasn't,
Good news.
just didn't work to have
Yeah.
it all start at the same time, so. So anyway, that's all I have.
Linda, do you have some things, updates?
Yeah. Well, we're very excited that the tour has asked Grace Community Church to participate, and the Women's Association is taking on this event. And what we have planned is, as they walk, they'll enter into the office area, and we have a social room. So we'll have refreshments in there, and we'll have a docent at the main sanctuary, so they can leave from there to the main sanctuary and then to the Grace Chapel. So we'll have a docent in Grace Chapel as well. And then our church organist has volunteered to play the organ in the main sanctuary, so that'll be an extra treat and bonus. So I think we're all set, ready to go, and our I just have to meet with everybody so that we're all on the same page. We're developing a program so that when they enter the church, they'll have a program given to them, and that will have some historical pictures and some information about the church. And so I think we're all set, ready to go. We just have to tone it up a little bit.
That's all I had. Is there any, kind of like open up, unless somebody has anything to add, the committee, I was going to open up the public comment. I mean, is there any public comment about Historic Preservation Day?
Tiani, did I cover everything you and I talked about in terms of or do you want to put in your 2 bits of it, please?
I just need to know how many tables. I just need to know how many tables at the hotel. So the closer we get, we kind of gotta because I know we said 2 or 3, but
For different functions like the committee or
for like the
information?
papers and the brochures about the day that people are picking up, and if there's anything else that's going for the whole day itself.
We can kind of like, we could probably do this, offline
Yeah.
and just kind of like just get, specific, when we know all the venues, and then we can just kind of go all the information that we want to. I mean, I think we've talked about having even community development, maybe having a table.
Okay.
Something, their incentives and what's happening with the RDA and the historic, the commercial grants and things like that. Would be a nice place for that kind of information. But we can go and we'll talk to staff and Michael and Susan, see what their needs are, and we'll get the other organizations. We'll come up with it.
That's all I need.
Okay.
So Tiani, this is Blair. I've been assigned to work with the museum on this part of the process. But just to give you some ideas, we've had at least 2 tables that were for information that had to do with the Boulder City Historic Preservation Committee or the city's information on historic preservation. And then we had like another table that had one of our committee members sitting, giving out information about the day's event. So 2, maybe 3 for that. But if other city, other city information is needed, and they need their own table or additional tables are needed, I'll work with you and Alan to kind of wrap that up and get you that information.
Perfect.
Thank you. Tom? Oh, sorry. Linda, did you?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, too, that I've been working a little bit with Daniel Erickson at the Mason Lodge, and Alan has met with him. So they're on board and they're excited, and I think they've got everything pretty much planned, right?
Oh, yeah. They're very excited. They have all kinds of neat secret stuff in the basement.
Yeah, so,
they want to share.
So that's all taken care of.
I'd like to suggest that
You can identify yourself, Tom.
my name is Tom Tyler. I'd like to recommend that the Water and Power building, the cotillion part, be opened up for part of the tour. That's very, very beautiful, and it represents what the town used to be. And I also might recommend that if we only get that theater, it's people to look inside the Boulder Dam Theater. I know they're using it for the film festival now, but if there's any way that he would give permission to let people see what something looks like from the Art Deco period and stuff, I think that would be just like a fabulous way to help a tour like that.
We can investigate it. It's a lot of the participation, though, is driven by volunteers. I mean, I need it's certainly something we can reach out to Desi Arnaz and that's definitely another jewel that we'd love to see opened up. But that's a possibility. At least can reach into that.
From what I've heard, if you want to reach Desi, it's good to go through the Ferraro bookkeeping company over there. Apparently they're working with him or I think Charmaine, is it her name? Charmaine? There's a lady named Charmaine, I think she's a good person to talk to if you want to get to Desi. That's what I heard anyway.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. So, item 6, for possible action, update on implementation of the committee's goals and priorities. Michael.
Mr. Chair, this is a monthly update at the request of the committee. As you've seen before, it is a matrix that highlights the committee's goals, the 8 goals with the tentative timelines, and you'll see in the update column in bold updated information regarding each. I just wanted to highlight under objective number 3 with respect to the update to the 1983 Janus report. I know at last month's meeting there was a request that committee members would be able to shadow or help the consultant as they evaluated this. They're recommending that they'd be happy to, after they've done their survey work, to go around individually with committee members that are interested and kind of explain how and what they saw. And that would be an effective way for them to work with the committee so you have a better understanding of some of those results.
I had a question. So, Nevada Preservation Foundation, I'm assuming that, they are somewhat going to be working on items 4 and 6. It's kind of tying into what they are being brought on board for.
Well, the scope and the focus was with respect to the development of the Historic Preservation Plan.
Okay.
And certainly with their proposal, it looks like it's going to touch on some of these things.
Right.
But I don't, that wasn't part of their project scope to complete those items.
Things. But yeah, I know that, they're kind of touching on all those items, and especially that promote economic development through historic preservation. That was kind of heritage tourism in that conversation, but I understand that they are touching on those subjects, but they won't necessarily accomplish those tasks. It's not part of their scope. Okay.
I have a question, Michael. The Stan Tech workshop, I don't think you put where it was going to be.
Both are going to be held right here.
Oh, okay.
In the council chambers.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Michael. I had a question about, or a suggestion for number 7 as far as educational campaign, promoting historic preservation or historic Boulder City. That's kind of a 2-part question. The poster that was developed by Ray and myself for the historic water filtration plant is kind of part of that process, or is part of the education for promoting Boulder City's history. You might consider adding that as a something that we're tracking there. But also, what is the status of that that wayside or that poster that's going up there?
I will let Susan provide an update. I know she's been working with Public Works on that.
Blair, there was a little bit of a challenge at first based on the source document that you had in PowerPoint, but fortunately, Brock managed to work a little magic and get it to, was able to apparently reformat it somehow, because while it was nice and clear at the 8.5 by 11 size, originally the resolution wasn't so great when it was being blown up to the 3 by 4 size. But Brock managed to make some changes, and at least to my view, it looked pretty clear, but I need to have Michael take a look at it because Public Works just needs the okay before they can go ahead with that. But we're moving forward. I can have Michael check that out tomorrow so that we can have Public Works move forward.
Thank you.
Michael, I have another question on the public workshops by Stantec. Are those duplicate workshops, or are they going to be different? Like the one at 6 p.m. and the one at 9 a.m. on the second day. Are they duplicates so that people can come at different times?
Yeah,
okay.
same workshop,
so
just giving the public
okay.
the opportunity. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So there's no further discussion?
Wait, I do have one question, because on item 3, the Northwind resource, so they have, it says survey work to begin in March. So have they, does that mean the on-site walking around looking at things survey will begin in March, or the whole process begins in March?
The on-site survey will begin in March.
So they have been doing things.
Research and
and so on. Okay, all right, good, all right.
And I think we talked about somehow letting the community know that that was going to go on. Is that still in the works? And what does that look like?
Yes, that will. I've spoken to Lisa LaPlante, because we want to make sure that the community is aware that the Northwind staff are walking around neighborhoods, that they know who they are and what the purpose is. And so we will be coordinating with Northwind and Lisa to put out communication on that when that occurs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll move on to item number 7 for possible discussion. An update on status of properties in the historic district. Well, Dan's gone. The best news I've heard is like we got a tenant for the Browder buildings. It's
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
I'm just totally amazed.
So what are they putting in there, Alan? I know you know.
I know. Well, I don't know. It's this place. Like, I don't know if they want to know.
In our packet, it says
Oh.
restaurant and coffee shop, so I'm wondering why does it say that if that's not?
Okay. Well, understand there is a maybe a possible cantina on the kind of a fine dining on the Browder side, and there's a coffee shop bookstore
Sounds neat.
on the Mel side. They're integrated in. I have some relatives that just called me and said they're asking me what's your position, Dad? And now I don't know what he's doing. He's working on a bookstore. But anyway. Okay, for possible action, committee discussion regarding any potential agenda items for upcoming Historic Preservation Committee meetings. Are there any items that we're not covering that we should be covering? Okay, this is the last chance for public comment on anything. Tom?
My name is Tom Tyler. I'm president of Emergency Aid. I've been with Emergency Aid for like 6 years now, and we occupy the Water and Power Building. The Stantec report has come out, and it is suggesting that there's a better use for the building. But I'd like to mention a couple things in the Stantec report that they failed to mention. They failed to mention that that Parks and Rec is a major portion of that building. It uses the cotillion part. It has classes even tonight where it does jujitsu, dance classes, and et cetera. The city didn't put any input into that at all, saying that it used the building. I would like to make them aware that I feel that the building is being used properly and to the best of its meant, even though the report says that they think there's better uses for it. I'm a little curious on a couple things in the report because the report was supposed to be about city buildings, and yet it's suggesting that the museum that's in a private building moved to that building. I'm a little mystified by that. When I discussed it with them, they didn't even know that was...
They were mystified.
They were mystified too, and they say they would cost like $3 million. I'd like to point out that the city has already re-roofed that building, has completely painted it, and from the outside, it's in great shape. There's absolutely no parking there. It's only available from one direction, and anytime there's an activity, I can't even be open with emergency aid. I'd like to point out that we're only open from 9 in the morning to 11:30, and I don't think that we're an eyesore or we interfere with the downtown in any way. They made a suggestion that we move, and to tell you the truth, that building is in 3 levels. Our food bank is on one level that has a grocery dock where I can unload trucks. We're responsible for the distribution from the 3 square. So once a month, I get several pallets of merchandise, and I need, some place to unload the groceries in that. The building itself is totally historic on the inside too. The cotillion is correct. Our office building, which is on another level, is up to par, what it used to be in historical time. And the only part that's different is another level again, where we have the food bank. And that's just cementing that. We've invested in the building. We've spent several $1,000s updating our computers and stuff in there. And I think that that really is the best use for the building. And I'm a little surprised that the Stantec report is like, it wants to keep the outside of the building the same, but it wants to change everything in the inside. And frankly, that building was made in the 30s, has 3 different levels, all different stairwells, And to bring that up to par, I can't even imagine how much that would cost. So I'm concerned about that. And I just wanted to let you be aware of that. And that there are a couple other committees happening. I went to the first one, and I was a little amazed that a lot of the stuff wasn't brought up about how the city uses the building. Also, Parks and Rec maintains the building. For truth and nothing, I am on the Parks and Recreation Commission. So that was another concern of mine. But I'm not speaking for the Parks and Recreation Commission. I'm speaking for Tom Tyler and as president of Emergency Aid. So, we put over $200,000 a year back into the community through grants and stuff. We also, if you see somebody disappear off the streets, a lot of times it's us because we found them where they can go to their home, and we find a Greyhound bus that'll take them there. There's a lot of transients too that we're able to, that just want to move. They want to be in Arizona in the wintertime, and they want to be up north in the summertime. So we have the same people coming through every year. So we deal with a lot of that. As a matter of fact, we're the first people to interview a lot of people coming into town. And, we can assure them what's going on. And we require people to be here 6 months before we help them. We do help people with food in that regardless, but we also do a lot of people that get stuck in town. We'll fix their car so they can move on to their position. We do a variety of things. We've even helped buy furniture to replace bed bugs and stuff. It's just, and historically, we've been here as long as the city has. So I think that we're a historical asset to boot. And I believe that if you keep the building the same way it is, you can still use it for all the events in the cotillion part. And I don't think, us being there slows you down at all. So I would like you to aid me in maintaining that building for emergency aid. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Is there any other public comment? Then this meeting is adjourned at an hour and a half. It's for you, Holly.
Is meeting adjourned?